Hey everybody, thanks a lot for joining me today. We are doing a tutorial using the Phoenix Rising palette from Pretty Vulgar. And if this sounds a little bit familiar here on my channel, I did mention it among several new palettes at Sephora. I did sort of a palette roundup review type video, and this was definitely the favorite palette of what I talked about. We're looking at a very, very rich, warm color scheme here. There are a lot of very intense mattes. There are some gorgeous shimmery metallic shades, but it's a perfect balance, I think. And the amount of richness in here, I think these shades offer so much versatility, those really deep dark colors. There's a beautiful shimmery purple that we're working into this look today, and we're kind of keeping it, I guess, maybe a hair on the light side for what this palette can do, because I think it could potentially go much, much darker than the way I used it today. But I wanted to make this sort of a spring-ish look. But in a nutshell, if you missed the video where I really reviewed this palette, I think what's so special about it is that they've given you just the perfect configuration of colors here in terms of light, medium, and dark, but also the textures of these shades are so good, and they don't get out of control. When you put your brush in, you don't have a ton of fallout everywhere, yet you have tremendous intensity. They're really fun to layer up one on top of the next. You've got some interesting kind of mid-tone shimmers, some really dark shades, some nice mattes up in here in that kind of orangey warm brown family. And I just think everything works together so nicely. If you're a fan of warm shades, this is kind of like the ultimate palette to have, I think. And when I reviewed this, I did compare the quality of these shadows, the experience using these shades, to Viseart shadows. Those shadows also are super duper smooth. They're a little bit goes a long way shadow, but yet they don't get out of control as you use them. And so that's definitely the experience I had today. I really enjoyed how the look came out, so here's how to do it. All right, guys, so I have primed my lids, and I'm gonna kick things off with kind of a nice, warm, peanut buttery brown in my crease. This is called my Ash, and I'm using my Sigma E25 brush. I just feel like this shade and this placement of the shadow is kind of a good place to start. Something I really like about these mattes is I feel like I can use just a little bit, and it tends to take care of the entire step. You know, I'm not constantly going back and forth to the palette. It has a nice sort of spreadability across the skin, but yet when I tap into my palette, I'm not kicking up a lot of powder excess, you know, it's just kind of staying under control. So even though these shades are generally kind of intense, you know, in this palette, it remains pretty easy to work with, in my opinion. So now that I've kind of got my crease situation set up there, I'm going to take it down a notch, just a little deeper. I'm going to use Light My Fire right here, just a little bit darker brown, and I'm going to focus that kind of in the outer part of my crease. So the first place I put my brush is where the most product goes, and then you can kind of blend. I find myself doing like small circular motions, even in the crease. Small circular motions and sort of working the shadow ever so slightly inward. Now I'm just going to take a bare brush and kind of whisk over the edge of what's happening there. And then we'll do the highlight, and a nice shade in this palette for a highlight is called Always Rising. It's a peach, and it has just the slightest hint of sheen. And I really like that it doesn't look too stark. You know, it's not like a full-on white alongside all these really rich warm shades. And then if you want to add a little more shimmer, like I can take this Untamable shade and give myself a little glow on top of it all. Now I may come back and do a few things to kind of accent and even further deepen the crease, but for now I'm going to move on to the lid area. And I'm also going to use Untamable again, and this is going to be kind of like a little pop around the inner corner. So you can use a really teeny tiny brush. I find that I can kind of multitask with my flat brush and just dab it right around the tear duct, and boom, it's all kind of taken care of. And then I'm going to just slightly pull that color right up onto the upper lid. This is a shade that packs on really nicely, so I feel like a patting motion really effectively builds it up. Then I just want to do this total like one shade seamlessly fading into the next across the lid. So I'm going to start with Fierce Desire. To me this shade feels kind of like a soft copper, and I'm going to pat that in kind of pretty much on the inner part of my lid, overlapping the lightest shade. And then I want to go into this purple right down here. This is called Devilish Darling. It's a nice purple with some shimmer. The sheen on this I think is really beautiful, and it plays so well with these other like burgundy tones. So for that shade, we're shooting to put that right over the center of the eyeball. And then I'm going to use a little bit of this reddish shimmer called Resurrected Sin. A little bit of that toward the outside, basically covering the outer corner with this shade. I grabbed just a little bit more of the My Ash color right here, this warm brown that I started with, and I'm getting a little bit of that blended right there in my kind of inner part of the crease. That's an area where my crease isn't as deep, and sometimes my look just doesn't feel quite as complete in that area if I'm not really careful and kind of tend to it, you know? And I don't want to make it too dark, so I'm taking a little bit more of that peachy highlight and just kind of running it over the entire thing. Next up, what I want to do is work in one of these really intense mattes and just add even more drama to this look on the outside. So Blowing Smoke, really pretty deep red. And I'm just using a small brush where I can totally control the color really well. And I'm not looking to overlap too much of what's happening on the lid because I think that's really pretty. But you might just kind of go on to just simply the outer corner a bit as you're working this shade in, a little on the outer corner, a little in the crease, but pulling it up and outward in the direction of the outer tip of your eyebrow. To me, that's what kind of keeps my looks in line, sort of. Ends up always giving me kind of a lifted look to the eye. But these mattes are so rich down in here. I love them. So again, focusing on the outer corner, little bit onto the lid, and then mainly getting it upward and outward. What's sort of funny about this palette is so many tones in there make me think fall, you know, like just all the richness and just those fall type shades that we're all reaching for that time of year. However, I think you kind of give it a springy spin when you start playing with the purple that's in here, and that somehow kind of gives it this added life and brightness, a little bit of an unexpected twist. I've got an eyelash here, but that's a small detail that I love about this palette that I think really changes it and makes it fun. And I am going to go in just with my finger. Now that I've done some blending, swirled around some more shadow, I do want to reinforce the fact that that purple is happening right there on the center of my lid. For my lower lash line, I can't decide if I want to make it really dramatic and like line my inner rim or keep it sort of bright. I think I do want to keep it bright, actually. I woke up with a little bit of redness in the eyes, you know, a little tiredness there, and I can always benefit from having a bright lower inner rim. So this is my Wet n Wild Ultimate Brow Highlight. I need to sharpen this, but this is just such a perfect product in here. And I find so many times I'll check my makeup later in the day and this stuff is still hanging around. And even when you're working with all these reddish shades around the eye, it just keeps everything bright. On my lower lash line, I think I'm going to go into Light My Fire here. Just our nice, rich, chocolatey, milk chocolate Hershey bar brown. Now another direction you can go with this palette is a very, very orangey one because Is Fire is super intense. And then I think I'll continue inward with the slightly lighter brown from about the center of my lower lash line inward. And I'm kind of tempted to make that whole lower lash line area just a bit more smudgy, so I'm using the best brush for that is this Instapop crease brush from Real Techniques. And the cut of it, I always show this whenever I use it, but it's kind of a uniquely cut brush here. It could dab shadow on the lid really nicely, but when you use sort of this end where it's all been tapered, and then you've got this end here, it makes smudgy shadow just does a really good job with that effect. So going back into my ash, and see, you just use the tip of this brush and run it right along. And maybe it's the shape of my eye, the amount of space I have in that area, it just fills it beautifully. Okay, now forging ahead, we're going to take my Milani Stay Put Matte 17-Hour Wear eyeliner in the matte black shade, and I'm just going to run this right along my upper lash line. I mean, nothing defines a look like black liquid liner. When you're playing with colors, when you're working with something that just feels a little bold to you, I feel like nothing sort of, I don't know, grabs the look and calms it down like a nice black liquid liner. Not that this is a particularly wild look, but I would say one of the wilder looks I did recently was with the palette bingo, or the eyeshadow bingo. over on Jen's channel. And my look ended up really intense. It kind of felt a little out of control at times, but once I laid some eyeliner down and got some mascara going on there, everything seemed to just make sense on the eye. Now under the liquid liner, I'm going to grab this super rich, plummy kind of wine color. It's one called Fly By Night, and I'm just kind of pressing this shade with an angled liner brush right underneath the wing, and I tell you what, this shade is so rich. It works in with black liner so amazingly well. It totally just blends right in. I love that. Alrighty guys, next steps are just curling the lashes, putting some mascara on top and bottom, and some lashes too, and then I'll show you how it all ends up. So here's the finished look. I put on my Neutrogena Hydro Boost mascara and my CoverGirl Clump Crusher water resistant on the lower lashes, and then I'm wearing some Red Cherry 43 style lashes here. So they're a pretty long lash with a nice little flare at the end, which I thought would fit the shape of the eyeshadow look really nicely. On my cheeks, I've got the Neutrogena Essential Cheek Palette, the collaboration with Kerry Washington. I've got this bronzer on and then this kind of poppy colored blush, which I think is very springy. A little bit of the Makeup Revolution Liquid Highlight in Champagne on my cheeks. And then my lip color is the Strip Search shade of the new Too Faced Natural Nudes collection. So this is that really light peachy nude. I worked in a little bit of my L'Oreal Color Riche Mastermind liner. Just gave it a hair more depth around the outside. And then for a gloss, I got this in, I think, a Sephora Play box. It's the Sephora Ultra Shine Lip Gel in the shade Perfect Nude. And so that's kind of a sheer gloss, but it gave some shine all over. But again, I am a huge fan of this palette. I think it's easy to use while offering the potential to have a lot of intensity. I loved working in the purple for this look because I think it just takes the whole idea of the palette, makes it a bit more springy. But when you're doing a look, think about the whole picture, because you could take a traditionally very fall type eye, and I think it's all about the way you complete your entire look as to how it all comes off. For example, when I was in Houston, I had posted an Instagram picture of this look, and so many people thought old Hollywood when you look at it. Well, what's actually old Hollywood about it? It would be the hair and that bold red lip. You know, everything else about the look, if you take those two factors away, it's basically like a standard full coverage makeup look with a neutral eye. So like with this look, I take this kind of color palette on the eyes, but then I pair in a soft glossy nude lip, a little bit of a soft coral cheek, kind of a nice dewy highlighted sheen there on top of the cheeks, and it feels like a really fresh look to me, you know? Also, the foundation I'm wearing is my Ordinary Coverage foundation, and I wear that in the shade 2.0 in light neutral, or light medium neutral. I'm not sure which one of those words tells you exactly what color this is. But you know what I'm saying as far as your look? Think of it more big picture wise, because this could have easily become a rich, dark, intense look, maybe with a more intense contour on the cheeks and a deeper lip color and whatever. But there are ways to take that seemingly fall look and keep it kind of soft and light. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being patient with me for getting this tutorial out. I know I mentioned this palette a while back in that Sephora palettes video. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.